please take your seats as we have to resume with the first working session of the conference. Thank you all for taking your seats, and I think now we can resume the first working session of the conference. The chair for this session is His Excellency Professor Abdel Salam Al-Majali, President IAS. The co-chair is His Excellency Professor Ibrahim Al-Naimi, our local co-host and chairman of the Doha International Center on Interfaith Dialogue. Professor Majali.
Thank you very much. I am not going to waste time of having the CV of everybody here. You all know them. They are very prominent. And I think we'll just go through because we are already late for this session, and we hope that we will finish on time. Certainly our first speaker is very well known to you. He talked a bit today in the morning, just remarks, but now he will address us in a very important subject, which is the Islamic world and the West towards a common understanding through development. His Excellency, Dr. Mahathir, please take the floor.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. His Excellency Dr. Abdel Salam Majali, Chairman of the session, members of the panel, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to say thank you very much for giving me this second opportunity to speak to the gathering. I am scheduled to speak on the Muslim world and the West, whether we can work together on the development of better relations for the development of our countries. The relationship between the Islamic world and the West had never been cordial. From the time of the Crusades to the present Palestinian conflict, there have been disagreements and even open confrontations between the Islamic world and the West. But despite all these, there is much to be gained from some degree of understanding between the two. There are so many things in the West which can contribute to the development of the Muslim world. On the other hand, the Muslims are rich not only in oil and other resources, but the true Muslim values and practices can contribute something towards arresting the moral decay in the West. Historically, the West had gained much from studying the sciences and mathematics pioneered by Muslims who acquired and developed the Greek sciences and philosophy, which the Muslim had assiduously studied and expanded. The Muslim world of the golden age of Islamic civilization contributed much to the European Renaissance. Unfortunately, just as the Europeans were accessing the vast stores of knowledge the Muslims had accumulated, the Muslims themselves decided to reject these allegedly non-religious studies. The result is the retrogression of the Muslim world and the advancement of the Western civilization. The gap widened with the passage of time. Off and on, Muslim intellectuals, realizing that the Muslims had fallen back in terms of their worldly progress, decided to revive Muslim learnings in these fields. but most of these attempts failed in the face of orthodoxy and the antagonism towards Western materialism. We are seeing yet again a consciousness among Muslims regarding the causes of their weakness and failures. They now seem to want to regain the preeminent position they had in the past in the fields of science, in governance and industrial capacities, etc. It is in the area of knowledge acquisition that the Muslims very much need to develop a good relation with the West. Just as before, when Muslims were more advanced in knowledge, the West had to seek knowledge from Muslim sources. Now the position is reversed and Muslims must seek knowledge from the West. It is not just a question of sending a few students to study in Western institutions. What is needed is a massive move to acquire the vast stores of knowledge accumulated by the West and implement some of the Western education systems and methods. While all Muslims should know their religion well and practice its teachings, but beyond that, the students should study the allegedly non-religious subjects, in particular the sciences and mathematics. When the Europeans found the mastery of scientific and mathematical knowledge was with the Muslims, they studied Arabic so as to facilitate access to these subjects. Now all Muslim students and scholars must have command of at least one European language so as to follow developments in new knowledge, particularly of science and mathematics. Many would say that all these are already being done. Many educated Muslims do speak one other language, but it is in terms of numbers that we are short. What we need is for the great majority of Muslims to be fluent in their mother tongue and in the language of knowledge. Obviously, to do all these, we need the cooperation of the West. There is, in the world of today, such a thing as intellectual property, and IP may be denied to others. But we should not be deterred by failures to access the latest in Western knowledge. It is for us to research and develop after we have acquired the essentials. Research and development is now part of the quest for knowledge. We must be aware that countries such as Japan and Korea have acquired the basic knowledge from the West, have now allocated huge sums of money for research and development. As a result, they have been able to discover new knowledge on their own and are able to develop and apply them without any assistance from the West. There is no Muslim countries which can be considered as developed as the great Eastern nations. Yet, the Muslims have the same level of intelligence as the people of these countries and the West. For example, Ahmad Zuwail, the Nobel laureate in chemistry, gained his award while doing his studies in the United States. This is because the educational and research facilities in his homeland are not conducive to advanced studies. So is the culture of research and the environment unsuitable. Had Zuwail stayed in Egypt and pursued his studies there, it is very unlikely that he would succeed as well as he did in the field that he chose. There must be a lot of Ahmad Zuwails in the Muslim world. But without the up-to-date facilities, the Muslim world could not have excelled as they should. I understand that Qatar has embarked on an ambitious program to bring Western institutions to the country. This is the kind of cooperation and understanding with the West that should be emulated by all Muslim countries. If we can afford it, we can hire the Western teachers, but more importantly, we should maximize the use of the facilities now available in Qatar and other Muslim countries by opening them to all the Muslim world. In this educational field, cooperation and understanding can be developed between the Muslim world and the West. It is important that the general level of education in Muslim world matches that of the West. The levels of knowledge gained through systematic education is what determines the level of development of a country. The Muslim civilization of the past was based on the knowledge of the scientists and mathematicians produced by the Muslim countries. For research and development in the field of knowledge and in other fields, the need is for support from the governments. Unfortunately, governments in the Muslim world are seldom supportive of not only research, but of national development in general. They are not supportive because of the culture prevalent in the governance of their nations. We know of the great development in Western countries. We know that they are considered to be developed countries. We know that they are powerful, even though at times they mess up things. There are many reasons for their being better developed than most countries of the world, and certainly they are more developed than Muslim countries. Even if some Muslim countries are fantastically rich, they are not considered as developed. Yes, there are many reasons for the development of the countries of the West, but the main reason is their skill in governance. They have gone through many systems, from absolute monarchies to autocracies to republics and now to democracy. But whatever system they may be practicing, their governments have been more successful than others in statecraft, in the skills of administration. They have defined and categorized roles that their government should play in the management of their countries. They have developed systems and methods to render their governments effective. Despite the high growth of their populations in the past, they have not lost touch with their people, and they ensure that the needs of their people are met. Despite their many failures, the countries of the West have remained far ahead of Muslim countries. They have never been secretive about their systems. In fact, they are wont to forcing others to adopt their systems. If we wish to develop using their governmental system, they would only be too happy to help us. We need not adopt everything that they do. We can be selective, taking only those compatible with our creed and beliefs. The result can be better relations with them without sacrificing our independence. Obviously, the very fact that we are discussing the subject of bringing about a common understanding between the Muslims and the West is an admission that the relationship with them is in need of change. We are convinced and concerned, but that is not enough. There must be more people, both Muslims and Western people, who should feel the same way. We cannot change something that affects such a huge number of people without the idea being understood and supported by as many of them as possible. If we don't, then this will be an academic exercise, and that is not going to do any good to anyone. Assuming that we know what we want, we need to know how we can get others to know and to want it. This is an educational process. It is about changing mindsets of people. We know that the present state of affairs is not doing us much good. We are dissipating our energy and wealth on nothing that is beneficial to us or to the West. On the other hand, if we are to gain acceptance by both, we must have a win-win formula. Maybe in the economic and financial fields, the West may gain something from the Islamic world. In these fields, the practice advocated by Islam are justice, equity, and fairness. For the West, this advocacy by Islam would be hard to believe. But still, it is true. It takes 3 Hindu scholars, Sheila Devi Sundarasan, Lakesh Gupta, and Balachandran Shanmugam, writing in their book entitled Islamic Finance, a system that survived the subprime crisis, to point this out to us. In the chapter on the philosophy of Islamic banking, it says, and I quote, "The Islamic bank, in essence, an Islamic business, is guided and embraced by Islamic principles of social justice, equity, and fairness. The best known features of Islamic banking is the prohibition of interest, that is riba. But Muslim economists hold that the view that riba is not restricted to usury only, but encompasses interest and other fixed returns as well. Islam allows only one kind of loan, and that is Qadr Hasan, literally good loans, where the lender does not charge interest or additional charges over the money lent. Islamic law is based on the belief that the provider of capital and the user of capital should equally share the risk of all business ventures. In the interest-based system, the pressure is on the borrower. He must pay back his loan with the agreed interest regardless of the success or failure of his venture. Making money from money is not acceptable in Islam. Money has no value in itself and therefore should not be allowed to give rise to more money. The human effort, initiative, and risk involved in productive ventures are more important than money that is used to finance it. Muslim jurists consider money as potential capital rather than capital. It becomes capital only when it is invested in business. Muslims must use the money to purchase things. Hoarding money is abhorrent to Islam. Money represents purchasing power. Islam forbids gharar, that is uncertainty, risk or speculation. The current Western system is almost entirely based on gharar, on uncertainty, risk, and speculation. The trading in currency, the subprime loans, investments by hedge funds, investments in shares for capital appreciation are all speculative. Clearly, the present financial crisis is due to uncertainties and taking high risks for high returns. A lot of investors made a lot of money, but when the bubble bursts, the effect on society as a whole is horrendous. Whole countries collapse, bringing misery to millions of people. There is no fairness, equity, or justice, as the sufferers are not responsible for the catastrophes. Till today, there has been no solution to the catastrophic financial crisis, and there will be no solution, for all the solutions are based on the same money makes money creed. During the Asian financial crisis brought about by the currency traders' activity of making money from virtual money, the solution offered by the IMF and the World Bank was to lend money to pay off debts. The only real result was to make the borrower indebted to the World Bank and to the IMF. For years, the country would remain debt slaves. We see the same thing happening during the present crisis. The only difference is that the amounts are in billions and trillions. The solution is based on money making money. There is a state of denial prevailing. There is no willingness to admit that the system has collapsed. But the Islamic world, with its huge monetary wealth and its natural resources, can perhaps contribute towards the resolution of the crisis by getting the West to understand some Islamic business principles. Malays are not the wisest people in the world, but they have a good saying that can help mitigate the causes at least. They say, and I quote, "When you lose your way, go back to the beginning," unquote. The West needs to go back to the beginning and to give up, if not the whole of their money make money creed, but at least some of them, and then only will they bring to an end the crisis and prevent it from periodically recurring. What applies to Western finance also applies to business and trading. When we talk about good business, it should not be good for owners or the business only, but good for the customers, the purchasers, and the society as a whole. Present-day business is not concerned about the miseries caused by business activities, especially financial business. Thus, currency trading, which is said to be worth $4 trillion a day, equal to the total output of Germany in a year, benefit only the currency traders. There are no spin-offs or even trickle-down effect. No jobs are created, no new businesses, no increase or in domestic or international trade, nothing to show that such huge transactions have been carried out. Currency trading is not even about money making money. It is about virtual money making virtual money. Yet, the misery caused to countries and the millions of their population is real and universal. Yet, despite the injustice, absence of equity and fairness, the West is not prepared to put an end to their trade. Perhaps the West will find it difficult to believe that the Muslim world advocates social justice, equity, and fairness. They can point out to the lack of such in Muslim countries among Muslims, but these are aberrations, and aberrations are found in every religion or ideology. The problem between the Muslim world and the West is due to both taking the aberrations in their practices as the true creed. If there is to be understanding between the Muslim world and the West, the first steps must be for each to take a hard look at its own practices and to correct them, and in so doing project a true picture of their different creeds and then to educate each other about them. When they do this, not only will they materially develop, but there will be real understanding between them. I thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And we are grateful to your presence and to your very important talks and new ideas, especially about banking, which we as scientists, we know very little about this. Our next speaker is Farouk, our friend Farouk Al-Baz. He's going to talk about big ideas based on science for fast-track development, emphasis on the case of Egypt. And we have to start by saying to him, time is important, so we are lacking of time.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I was asked to specifically deal with a case of applying science to an economic development plan. I will emphasize a plan that I have proposed for the people of Egypt, and I will show some satellite images, so maybe I'll need could put down some of the lights here up front if you can, please. And this story begins with the fact that the problem in Egypt is the increase of the population while the land area has been constant for thousands of years. The land area, which is the Nile Valley and the Nile Delta, has actually been losing the fertility by the land being used for other things. We measured the loss of arable land for urban growth, and we found out during the past 25 years that Egypt is losing something like 30,000 faddans, which is like hectares, per year to urban development or urban growth. Actually, this means that the 5.5 million acres of land in Egypt would completely and totally disappear in 183 years if that rate continues, which means one thing, that Egyptians have to expand the living area that they are in now. Can we cut down some of the lights up front, please? In 1990, the Minister of Agriculture, whom we've been visiting a lot with His Highness Prince Hassan, he has asked me a question, a point-blank question. He said, can we actually find the total area of land in Egypt by satellite images? I said, of course, we can take a picture of the territory and figure out exactly how much land is under agriculture. He said, would you be able to do that for us, please? Because I have asked 3 institutes within Egypt to tell me how much land is under agriculture. 2 of these institutes are part of my ministry and 1 from outside. And when they came back, all the 3 numbers were different. And they varied between 5.5 million acres and 7.2 million acres. How am I going to plan if I don't know the numbers within a few million? So we did that. We took the pictures from 1972 and compared them to 1990, and we figured out the difference between the two. All the red that you see is the land under agriculture. All the blue you see on the other side is the increase in 18 years between 72 and 90. Is it possible to cut some of the lights outside, please? And one of the things that would be very interesting to see is the fact that each town within the Nile Delta has a halo around it, which is the growth of the urban growth, the encroachment of buildings over the agricultural land. And when you see that around Cairo, the gray area on the right there is the city of Cairo, and all of the red is the growth in 18 years, meaning that if that continues to grow like that, then there will be a real problem indeed, because the agricultural land will be diminished and the production of food will lessen. And we know that wherever civilizations grow, there are 3 components, 3 pillars of civilization. The production of excess food, meaning enough food for everybody, organization of people, and the comfortable living in urban areas. And why in urban areas comfortable living? Because a few of the people that live in an urban area comfortably, they don't have to look for their food, can think, and among those who can think can produce some ideas and so on, and these are the things that provide a civilized life, which means that the Egyptians have to increase the land area which they are using for living. And for this reason, we've constructed this whole notion of a development corridor west of the Nile Delta and the Nile River, parallel to them, to make a new transportation corridor that connects everything and open up area in the Western Desert in Egypt for additional living. This is a satellite image, and we can look at that within the context of the geological map of Egypt, of the sand dunes, and this particular corridor is very far away from all the sands in the deserts, and topographically it goes from very high topography in the south to very low topography as we move towards the Mediterranean. The one north-south axis, which is parallel to the Nile Delta and the Nile River, has east-west components that actually connect to the main densely populated regions in Egypt, so that the densely populated areas of Egypt can find a breathing space to the west, places to make additional towns, additional villages, new universities, hospitals, or whatever. So the main axis would have a very large highway, international standards, with a train for transportation and water pipeline for services along that highway, and a line for electricity connected to the national grid. The reason for that line of electricity is the fact that I personally believe that the Western Desert of Egypt is the perfect place for the desert tech, the one that His Excellency, His Highness Prince Hassan talked about, and that if you develop that line of electricity, then you can develop solar energies, then it will be cheaper to connect that solar energy line to the main network. So you have here a kind of a drawing of the situation where you have that the superhighway with the parallel line of the transportation for railroad, and then electricity line and power line and so on. And then the east-west connectors, basically to allow urban growth away from the Nile, just west of the Nile and very close to the areas where they are right now, so that to give them space to make new towns, industrial growth, factories, storage bins and whatever. And then you plan it beforehand so that it does not become a mess the way most of the cities in Egypt are right now. So you plan the growth like this, and if you have factories, for instance, you do it in the lower left side there, because the wind direction in Egypt is from the north to south. So if there are factories, then all of the stuff from factories goes away from the people living. And then the east-west connectors connect to the major towns, and I will show you 3 cases with satellite images, and then through 3 cases of topographic maps. This one happens to be the first one to the middle of the Nile Delta, which is a town called Tanta, and Tanta is specifically connected to all the other towns in the Delta. So if you connect that main transportation route on the left to Tanta, then you're really connected to all the towns on the Nile Delta, and one connects to west of Cairo, because the industrial growth can be there, as well as growth of the ministries and so on. And next would be Fayoum, where I personally believe that most of the factories of Egypt can be placed on just the northwest of the Fayoum depression. It's a very vast area, absolutely flat, has nothing in it right now. You can develop it to the hilt with as many factories as you wish. And since the wind direction, as I said, goes from north to south, then any products from these and the smoke from any of these factories goes away and goes to the south, where there is absolutely no human beings would be living in that place. But still, it's very close to Cairo, very close to Alexandria, very close to all the population, the rest of the population centers. The 3 cases of whether I will show topography. This is the first one near Qena, where the lighter greenish color is areas that are flat and they are conducive to additional development. This particular one is west of Luxor in Egypt, and I personally believe that the plateau just west of Luxor is a magnificent site for all kinds of tourism. I personally believe that this particular site here that's in a plateau, when you go there and look over that plateau, you see the whole river valley, and you see the river itself, and you see the buildings around it, and you see the feluccas or the sailboats within the Nile. It's a magnificent site. It's very clean, has nothing with the rest of the situation. And if you have all kinds of hotels and their own airport and all kinds of things like this, 3 times as much as Dubai you can put in that slope over, or the plateau west of Luxor, and people that would come there would have 20 minutes to be in the King Tut's tomb or the Ramesseum of Ramses the Great or the temple of Queen Hatshepsut, meaning that's a fantastic potential site for vastly improved tourism in Egypt. The last item I would like to show is west of Komombo and Aswan is a great big plain that actually had an old channel of the Nile River going right through it. And we have recently visited that area to see it. It's absolutely flat site. This is the camp where we were. And within this site, there is a very good soil, and this is just pure fertile soil. There was dug a well in there to see how deep is that soil, and the soil there is about 3 meters thick of pure, clean soil, meaning that the area can be utilized in agriculture, and this area is nearly 1 million acres, just west of the Nile, meaning there are vast areas in Egypt that has not been developed at all for the benefit of the population, and there is enough knowledge, geological knowledge and other knowledge that can help that situation, so that you can have a place for the Egyptian population to extend very close to the Nile, not very far. And the reason I'm saying that is the fact that I worked as science advisor during the last 3 years of President Sadat's reign, and he wanted to develop the deserts in Egypt. And we tried all kinds of developments in the Western Desert as well as in the Sinai. And we found out that very few people would move away from the Nile Valley to live somewhere else and consider that this area that they would live in forever. So that Egyptians are really tied to the Nile and the Delta, so that you can keep them around there, but expand the area where they live. The white area that you see there is about 10.5 million acres, which is nearly double the place where the Egyptians live now, which is 5.5 million. So the area that corridor opens up for development is nearly twice the area that the Egyptians live in today. And you need that because the population density experts say that the population in Egypt in the year 2050 is going to increase by 60 million people. So where would you add 60 million people to the 83 that exist today? So you need space for them to move, and that is something that we have to prepare for now so that you can utilize it later, and this is it that you can do there. And the area where I'm saying this white plain, that's the one marked white, that's west of the Nile River and Nile Delta, has groundwater to be utilized in agriculture, and I have 8 examples here of pieces of land that have been utilized in agriculture by groundwater all along the corridor from the southwest or west of Aswan all the way to west of the Nile Delta, meaning that there is proof today that there is plenty of groundwater in that plain west of the Nile, and therefore you can utilize this territory for agriculture with groundwater in that region. And indeed, there are some roads that are already there. The red lines are the ones that I'm proposing new roads, totally new. And then the yellow lines are improving of the or other roads, meaning about that if the road that I'm considering the big north-south corridor has 1,200 kilometers, about half of it is already there, and the other half would need to be added. And I really believe that this corridor should continue all the way through Africa someday, going from Cairo all the way to Cape Town. The reason for this is the fact that Africa is growing now and economically growing like crazy, and Egypt has absolutely nothing to do with this growth in Africa. If you take about a year ago, the international trade between China and countries within the African continent added up to $141 billion in 1 year, 2010. And the trade between India and countries in Africa added up to $36 billion. And the trade between Brazil and countries in Africa added up to $24 billion. Add this up to have something like $200 billion of trade in and out of Africa, and Egypt has nothing to do with it. And I really think if we have a corridor like that from Cairo or from Alexandria or Al Alamein all the way to South Africa, then there can be a much better place for Egypt within the African continent. And the reason for them, what I'm saying is that countries that developed to the hilt, the countries that developed very well, like India, had these kinds of corridors to ease transportation within the country. And here is that there are 3 corridors in India from the north, from Singapore all the way through Delhi, down to the south, and then another corridor through Calcutta through on the eastern side, and another one from Mumbai through the eastern side, all connecting down to Bangalore, Bangalore is the technical or the high-tech center for India, and you need these corridors to do it. In real life, that without these transportation corridors, nothing of a state can take shape. As a matter of fact, I served with the RAND Corporation, and they thought about what would happen to the state of Palestine. How would you make a state in a place like the West Bank? And they themselves figured out that the only way to do it is really to make a transportation corridor that links all of these. So you see one line here, not going through the existing cities, no, away from the existing cities, so you open up for growth. And you see the line that is going from the east, west, from Hebron through Jerusalem, Ramallah, and Nablus, and on the right side, Jericho. You have this line like that, and that line would be the one that actually would link all of these points to make a country out of bits and pieces. And the corridors themselves going east and west would be the ones that actually where growth would happen step by step. The east-west corridors would develop like that. That's the north-south corridor. That's in the case of Palestine, and then it would grow like this, and you have the water moving right through it. You have electricity going through it, the railroad, and then you know that with this happening, then you have a growth at one piece at a time, and this is where the urban growth occurs, meaning that that corridor that I'm suggesting for the western desert of Egypt, very close to the Nile, would open up the land in Egypt for extension of the population in a very nice place where you can extend the urban growth, the industries, educational institutions, hospitals, and all kinds of ideas for growth based on the scientific knowledge of the land and its resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Farouk. I think you opened our minds to these big projects, and we hope that the challenge will be taken seriously by every country in the area of Muslim country. Our third speaker is Professor Atar Rahman. He's going to talk to us about building bridges with the West through knowledge economy. And again, I think we have to finish on time. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Professor Majali, members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to all of you. Before I go to my talk, I'd like to spend 1 or 2 minutes on solutions. Points that were raised by the speakers earlier this morning. Firstly, the Islamic Science Foundation. This was raised by His Highness King Hassan. When I was the Minister for Science and Technology in Pakistan, I, as the special emissary of the President of Pakistan, President Musharraf, I went and met 11 heads of states of the OIC member countries, including His Majesty, the King of Arabia, His Highness the Emir of Kuwait. My first meeting with Prime Minister Mahathir at the time took place then, proposing an Islamic Science Foundation. And the proposal, this was a special letter from President Musharraf saying, set aside 0.1% of your GNP to create such a foundation. And it was strongly supported by the various countries, but when it came up to the OIC summit, which was to be taking place in Putrajaya, at the senior officials meeting before that, the idea was strongly opposed by Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. And so this didn't materialize. It has been put on the back bench. They never said no, said it's a good idea, but we'll think about it sometime in the future. Just 0.1%. We said we don't want it for Pakistan. Keep it in Malaysia or Turkey or IDB or whatever, but 0.1% of your GNP, so that there is a unified approach towards building a critical mass and cooperating and collaborating, so a mechanism. The second proposal I would like to make here to Qatar and also to some of the other Islamic countries, another solution. And this is, universities are not about beautiful buildings. They are about beautiful minds. The Cambridge University, with which I was associated for 9 years and I am now an honorary life professor at King's College, is 800 years old and has produced 71 Nobel Prize winners. Here you find in many of our countries beautiful campuses, paperless environments, fantastic infrastructure, highly sophisticated scientific equipment, but what is missing is high quality faculty. That's the single most important thing. The proposal starts sending 10,000 students from the Islamic world, from Turkey, from Malaysia, from Pakistan, from wherever, on merit to the best universities in the world. Get them back. If Qatar is doing it, make the condition that this scholarship is conditional to your coming back and serving for 5 years in this country, or whichever country does it. Malaysia can do it too. Create clusters, create high quality centers of excellence. It'll cost you about $5 billion per year, but within 10 years, you'll have a rapidly changing landscape. With due apologies, I must say that many of these countries are being taken for a ride by Western universities who are kept setting up these campuses, but there's not one university which has resulted, one of these foreign universities which has been ranked amongst the top 200 or 300 or 400 universities of the world. So let's stop fooling ourselves, invest in people, invest in quality faculty, and then cluster them in suitable institutions, and then the magic of science will begin to happen. I'm going to be taking you a little bit into the future about the wonders of science and what can be achieved through science and technology in this day and age. I'm just trying to recognize this keyboard which has Arabic signals. How do I move the slides? Yes, probably this one. Yes, thank you. Well, we live in an age, ladies and gentlemen, where knowledge has now become the key driver for socio-economic development. And countries that have realized that their real wealth lies in their children, not in the oil or gold or minerals, those are the countries which are moving forward, leaving others behind. And we live in a world where truth has become stranger than fiction. In this hall, you can create millions of plants without any seeds through tissue culture technology. Scientists are learning you have seen many plants growing in the deserts. Why? What gives them that resistance to salt? So scientists are learning what part of the structure of the plant genome gives them that salt resistance. And these genes are being transferred into maize and wheat and rice so that you can grow plants, food trees in desert areas. Some scientists have taken the genes from the firefly and transferred them into orchids, and you have luminescent orchids. India is now coming out in the next few months with a car which was invented in France and then developed in Luxembourg, which will run just on air. A Kevlar air cylinder at the back, high pressure. It will not be using a combustion process at all, just high pressure air. And the cost of running it will be about 10% of the cost of petrol. The new types of jet engines which have been developed, scramjets, aeroplanes are now able to fly without internal fuel. Once they reach 5 times the speed of sound, they can use the oxygen present in the stratosphere as fuel. Completely paralyzed people who can't even move their fingers can move wheelchairs with thought control. They wear a special cap with sensors, and they think, I want my wheelchair to go here, it'll go there. I want my wheelchair to go here, it'll go there. Just thought control. And the blind are able to see with their tongue. This is the fantastic world of science. This is a device developed in Wisconsin in collaboration with the University of Pittsburgh. They have glasses and they wear a little camera on the glasses, which takes in the optical signals, which are converted into electrical signals, and these are then transferred into a lollipop-like device on their tongue. And this then sends signals to the brain, and partial eyesight is restored. A blind person can then partially distinguish between the lift buttons and see distinguish between a knife and a fork. This is a cyborg beetle, partly insect. It can sit on your wall and transfer all the information that the prime ministers may be talking to each other, or the presidents, to an embassy a few miles away, a cyborg beetle. And this is a nano machine, which is a molecular machine. These are all atoms which can run through your blood vessels and clear clots. So, as I was saying, you have this strange world of where, you would have seen the Harry Potter books. Wearing a cloak where a person disappears is now a reality. The new metamaterials are cloaking devices, which if you wear, you'll disappear. They actually bend light around them. And this is being developed for tanks, so that tanks will become invisible if they're coming towards you. There's bulletproof paper made of nanocellulose, paper which is bulletproof. And very recently, just 6 months ago, we had the first conversion of cellulose to butanol by a microorganism. What is so exciting about butanol? Well, you can use it 100% in car engines. Ethanol, you can go only up to 20 or 25%. So this is a microbial process. So basically, you can run cars on old newspapers. That's all you require. Stem cells are transforming the way medicine works. To some of us young, aging people, there is hope. There is, at the end of your DNA, there is a cap called the telomere. And as you grow older, this cap erodes. And after a certain age, the DNA itself starts eroding. And that is partly responsible for the aging process. Scientists have now discovered a compound which puts the cap back on. And when they gave this compound to aging mice, the mice became younger. The mice became younger. So this is the fantastic world. And there is gene therapy or parallel computing or a whole range of other things that are happening. So in this world, if the Islamic countries want to progress, it has to be on the basis of human capital, on the basis of knowledge, and societies in which innovation and entrepreneurship can prosper. And let me just give you the example of Korea. In 1960, only 5% of their youth had access to higher education, and their exports were about only some $32 million. In 2009, 92% of the youth today in Korea between the ages of 17 to 23 have access to higher education, and their exports have grown exponentially. And people often ask me, what is the point of creating a high-level science and technology institution, especially the finance people? I give them the example of MIT. From MIT have come some 4,000 companies, which today have annual exports of $240 billion, and which employ over 1 million people. Malaysia has been spending some 25% of its budget in education for the last 30 years, thanks to the vision of His Excellency Prime Minister Mahathir. And today, would you believe it, 87% of total high-tech exports from the Islamic world, 87% of the total high-tech exports from the Islamic world come from Malaysia alone. So in this, and these are 3 slides which tells you what the disease is. Expenditure on defense, health, and R&D, an average for the African OIC countries. 3% on defense, 2% on health, 0.1% on R&D. The Asian OIC countries, 4.1% on defense, 1.4% on health, and 0.3% on R&D. And the Arab OIC countries, 7.1% on defense, 1.25% of their GDP on health, and 0.2% on R&D. This is what the disease is. Buying these expensive toys, which soon become outdated, and going out and buying some more. Not because they need them, but of corruption and because of family links, kickbacks, and so on. So a very little effort to create their own defense weapons. And in terms of scientific, I'm not going to give you the data, just one slide I think is going to be relevant. There are changes taking place. If you look at 2009 publications, there were 63,000 articles published in 2009 as compared to only 18,000 articles in the year 2000. This is the Science Citation Index. So there has been more than a 300% increase in research publications in the last 9 years. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. However, we have only a very few number of universities which are in the top 400 or 500 of the world, only 0.7% of the world universities, and expenditures on R&D, OIC countries spend only about 1.8% of the world global R&D expenditures. So I've already talked about the high-tech exports. Let me now go on to telling you a little story about Pakistan. President Musharraf asked me to take over as the Minister for Science and Technology in the year 2000. I asked him when he invited me, are you serious about science? He was a little taken aback by the question. And he said, of course I am serious. Well, I said, I want to know how serious you really are. And he said, well, how serious do you want me to be? And I was prepared for that question. I said, this is how serious I want you to be. If you're serious about science, you have to invest. We don't want, it's not the job of Germany or France or UK or USA to train Pakistanis. We have to put our money in our children. As a result, to cut a long story short, we ended up with a 6,400% increase in the development budget of the Ministry of Science and Technology. And later, when I was the minister responsible for higher education for another 6 years, a 2,400% increase in the development budget of higher education. And this, and I said, well, Pakistan has some 85 million below the age of 19. That's 54% of the population. And as we heard this morning, a similar situation in many OIC countries. But how do we attract them into research, into science, into engineering, into all the fantastic fields that are transforming the world today? So, well, we have to excite young men about the wonders of science, that scientific research is not about a 9-to-5 job. It is about being paid for a love affair. You have to select the brightest and send them to top universities across the world. And then legal bonds don't work. You have to attract them back by creating an enabling environment through salaries, through research funding, through access to literature, and through creating a critical mass, clusters. So we perhaps became the only country in the world where the salaries of professors in universities became 5 times the salaries of federal ministers in the government. 5 times the salaries. However, we linked it to performance. There was no point in paying weak people high salaries. So a contractual system with international evaluation was built in. And we said that we will put most of our money not in infrastructure, just in infrastructure, but mainly in scholarships. So a $1 billion worth scholarship program was started. 11,000 scholarships were awarded. 5,000 of the brightest people chosen on merit were sent to top universities across the world. Each student coming back had access to a $100,000 research grant. He had a job to come back to, and strong linkages, and this is where the bridges with the West come in, strong linkages with Western universities, 50 linkages with British universities, hundreds of linkages with German, US, and European and US universities, and large number of diaspora were attracted back, some 600 people who had lived all their lives abroad in USA and Europe were attracted back, clustering of top people. So 45 top-class mathematicians clustered in just one institution, the Government College University, Lahore, and a good center for mathematics emerged, and agreements were made with Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, Austria, and China for placements of all these scholars in their best universities. The world's largest Fulbright program was initiated with half the money coming from Pakistan, a massive postdoctoral scholarships, split PhD programs, and interactive lectures. And this is how the money was spent, most of it in human resource development. Because as I said, quality education is about quality faculty, not about beautiful buildings. Standardization of degree programs, quality assurance systems, and I was also the Minister for IT and Telecom for a few years, and I had the opportunity to improve the IT infrastructure. So 29 cities had internet in the year 2000. These were increased to 2,000 towns, cities, and villages. Optical fiber was expanded from 40 to 1,000 cities. Internet usage exploded. The cost of bandwidths were brought down phenomenally. These are the knowledge highways, far more important than the road highways, because on these knowledge, trade, commerce travels. Mobile telecommunication expanded, and this then resulted in establishment of the Pakistan Educational Research Network. Today, every public sector university in Pakistan has free access to 25,000 international journals and 60,000 textbooks, keyword searchable and downloadable. So this is a huge repository of knowledge freely available to all our universities. And one excellent program, which I think, and I mentioned this yesterday, which we can all join hands, is that distances have died. We have seen the death of distance, because now it doesn't matter whether you're in Stanford or in the room next door. We are all connected. And a recent example was when Dr. Farooq Albaz wanted me to give a keynote lecture, and I couldn't get a visa to get to the United States, and I delivered this lecture, and it was very interactive, and I think there were no problems at all from Karachi. So we have started a series of lecturing by top professors from across the West and the best professors in the Islamic world. Not just odd lectures, but complete courses being delivered, so that students enrolled in our universities can take those courses delivered by the best professors, followed by an exam, followed by a recognition of the credits by the universities concerned. I was in Malaysia recently, where the King of Malaysia, day before yesterday, gave me an award, and I proposed this: let the best Malaysian professors and I join in this initiative, because we have a lot of very good talent, but it's spread around too thinly. Can we collaborate together? We placed a satellite in space, ParkSat-1, which has footprints. It's our educational satellite, and we had an explosion taking place in access, where there was a tripling of enrollment in universities in 7 years. We had a doubling, more than doubling of number of universities and degree awarding institutes. We had an evening out of the male and female enrollment. The green are the men, and the red are the women. And we had a 600% increase in ISI abstracted publications and a 1,000% increase in citations over those years. This is how the graph of Pakistan looks in terms of research publications. And at this rate of growth, we should be overtaking India next year in terms of number of research articles per million population. It's 5,000 publications this year in ISI abstracted publications. The PhD output also exploded, but we linked it to foreign assessment, because quality is more important than numbers. And this is how the PhD output has grown and continues to grow. And we have now several universities ranked in the top few hundred of the world. For instance, the National University of Science and Technology is 273, UET at 281, Karachi University in Natural Sciences is 223. We had none before in 60 years. The World Bank, USAID, and the British Council have come forward with comprehensive books about what Pakistan has done. And the world's top journal, Nature, has published 4 editorials about what I was trying to do. The first, on 27th November 2007, was entitled The Paradox of Pakistan. And it talked about this strange country with terrorism and bombings and so on, and yet in the same country you have such a wonderful program which is transforming the higher education landscape. The next editorial, 28th August 2008, this was after President Musharraf left, and it was entitled After Musharraf, and it said, don't go back to the Stone Age which existed before, persist on this path. And the last one was a birthday gift to me, the 22nd September, which happens to be my birthday. The editorial talked about what I was doing, and I was rather amused and humbled by the statement in which they called me a force of nature. Well, Pakistan has won several awards. We won the Twas Prize for Institution Building that I was conferred in Durban, South Africa a couple of years ago. The Royal Society London which is the most famous and prestigious scientific society, has come forward with a book called A New Golden Age. And in this book, it says that what Pakistan has done is the best practice model to be followed by other developing countries. For some reason, India became worried. And my dear friend, Professor C.N.R. Rao, who is together with me in TWAS, I'm the Vice President of the TWAS Council, he made a presentation to the Indian Prime Minister and about what Pakistan was doing. And there was this article published. It was headed in the Hindustan Times, Pak Threat to Indian Science by Neha Mehta. And it talked about what I was doing and what we were doing and how Pakistan, it said Pakistan may soon join China in giving India serious competition in science. I think we have much to work together. As was being said earlier, we have to open our minds and hearts, and instead of looking at each other as competitors and adversaries, we should look at each other as friends and on the path to solving a common problem, which is fighting poverty, illiteracy, and focusing on socio-economic development. In the last few slides, I will just want to say that the seeds that we sowed are now beginning to pay back. 12 students that we had sent abroad came back from the little company in Islamabad, and it won a contract for $250 million. So this was in competition to foreign contracts. And this is Austria conferred its highest civil award for this work a few years ago. This was the most humbling moment of my life when I was asked to sign the famous book, which was once signed by Sir Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin when I was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society. But this is also a sad moment, because sad in the sense that there are only 2 fellows from the Islamic world alive today who are Fellows of the Royal Society. Besides me, we have Professor Akhtar, who lives in Southampton. And this is really, we have not had a single Nobel Prize winner who has actually won a Nobel Prize for his work within the Islamic countries. This is my institute. We have 450 students doing PhD, the largest doctoral program in Pakistan, 12 superconducting NMR spectrometers, mass spectrometers, pilot plant facilities, and various laboratories on immunology and neuroscience. And this is President Musharraf listening on our video conferencing facility to a lecture from Australia, which was being given in the area of medical sciences. And we have had 120 German students who have come to my center to study chemistry. This was my dream when I came back from Cambridge, that we would have a center so good that students from advanced countries would come to study science in my research institute. And there are many of these German students who are there now. So I will end by saying that there are 4 pillars of progress. All 4 must be in place. Education at all levels, science and technology, innovation and entrepreneurship, and that itself is a wide area with many things that need to be done, but perhaps most important of all, a visionary, honest, and technologically competent leadership. Unless a country has that, we will not move anywhere. Building bridges with the West, we are very grateful for all the help that was provided by Germany and France and Italy and Sweden and all these programs that I had. But I'm also concerned, that's why there's a question mark in front of the title, Building Bridges with the West. For instance, I was talking to the Director General UNESCO just last month. I'm on their high-level science and technology panel, and she was very, very worried at the strong opposition that UNESCO is facing from the technologically advanced countries, USA and some European countries, in including higher education and science and technology amongst the MDGs. It appears that some countries feel that there should be no Koreas and Japans emerging from the developing world, which is sad. So the future lies in our children. Let's learn to invest in them. Let us stop investing just in beautiful buildings. Let's invest in beautiful minds, for which surely there is no shortage. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Professor Ata Rahman. And again, we just finished on time. No doubt all the audience here and myself, we share the admiration for our three speakers, and we have terrific amount of information and vision, and it is up to us now to try to use most of these visions and ideas for the future of our children, as Professor Atal Rahman has said last, that we have to invest in the minds, not just in the buildings. Thank you very much. The session will be left, and I just give some prizes. It's not prize, it's just a nominal medals to the speaker, and that will end this session for to go to lunch. I think we had enough for the mind. Now we have to go for the stomachs, because that is the oil and the petrol of the brains.
Thank you, Professor Majali. Will you be kind enough to present a token of appreciation from the IS to our eminent speaker, firstly to Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, to Dr. Farouk Al-Baz, and to His Excellency Professor Ata Al-Rahman, and to your co-chair, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Naimi. One left here. Dr. Ibrahim Al-Naimi is the chairman of the Doha Center for Interfaith Dialogue. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Lunch is served next door, exactly, and we resume here at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock sharp, we will start session 2. Lunch is next door. Thank you very much.